Hello YouTube, Dave here again. I'm back with another installment in my series archiving the entirety of my RPG collection. So this is episode number 5 as far as the numbered episodes go. So far I've shown off my collections for the Starfinder role-playing game, Pathfinder role-playing game, the Dragon Age role-playing game, and last week I had shown my collection of Dungeons & Dragons 0 Edition, or original D&D, the version that came out back in 1974, you know, the grandfather of all tabletop role-playing games as we have them now. Today I'm going to be looking at the handful of items that I have for the D&D Basic line. And when it comes to D&D Basic, its history is kind of convoluted. I honestly pretty much always make mistakes when I try to explain it, and so I'm not going to try to get into like specific, dates or things like that, because I know I'm going to get those wrong. But the original version of the D&D Basic Rules was released by Eric Holmes, and it had, I think it was basically called like the Blue Box version of D&D. And it was meant to be it was for characters levels 1 through 3, and that's one thing that's remained constant throughout all of the basic rule sets that have that name. But it was meant to sort of clean up and reorganize the OD&D style rules to make them a little more user-friendly, so to speak. And it was also meant to be a transitional product that took you from the original D&D into first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Like, from what I understand, the Holmes version was really meant to be like a standalone product and wasn't really meant to be like the start of its own separate line. However, that would change when Tom Moldvay put out his version of the basic rules sometime thereafter. And so the Moldvay Basic was also followed up by the Cook Expert Rules. So Tom Moldvay did the basic rules. David Cook, I believe, was the primary author of the Expert Rules. And that was the start of its own separate product line. So they had those two in the series. I believe there were plans for a third, referred to as the Companion Rules, but I don't know if that version ever got released, at least under that particular version of the D&D Basic Rules. So the Moldvay Basic, just again sort of made things a little bit, I'm not going to say necessarily neater from there, but it was, like I said, the start of its own product line. So you had things like, for example, the weapons did different die types of damage, versus like the OD&D style, which most things did like a D6. So that was one of the changes. And then you had the Expert Rules, which actually took characters from levels 4 all the way to 14, with the Companion Rule set was supposed to go all the way up to level 36, from like 15 to 36. Now, eventually there was the Frank Menser version of the D&D Basic Rules, which is referred to as like the Menser D&D or the Beckme D&D set. So this was the D&D Basic Rules set that actually got the full line essentially out. You had the Basic Rules and Expert Rules, which were essentially pretty much the exact same as the Moldvay and Cook versions that came before them. But then you also had a Companion Rule set that was released, as well as a Master Rule set. And I think it was the Master Rule set that took the characters all the way to 36. I believe the Companion Rules took the characters from level 15 into like the mid-20s. And then the Master Rules went all the way up to level 36. And then you had the Immortals Rules, which basically it was like epic levels before, epic level sort of thing. It was a type of gameplay where conventional levels no longer mattered. The Immortal Rules would eventually be sort of revised and rebalanced for the Wrath of the Immortals box set. And there was also a last attempt sort of in the 90s to breathe fresh life into the D&D Basic Rule set, which was the Black Box that was released during like the second edition AD&D days. I don't have, unfortunately, any of those, but I do have at least a handful of things here for the D&D Basic line, including one of my, what I always consider to be a holy grail item for my D&D collection. Now, one last thing before I finally get to start showing these products is that a lot of these items I actually picked up from the DM's Guild service, which is part of Drive-Thru RPG. It's a service that allows for either PDF purchases or print on demand for certain items, where you can actually get a physical copy of out of print and hard to find objects. If you're interested, there is an affiliate link in the description below, which if you click on that, if you visit the site through my link anytime in the next like 14 days after you click that link, anything that you purchase I get a small commission on. And it is a really cool service. It has things for all the various editions, but this, obviously you guys aren't here for a marketing commercial, so let's just get right into the start of my D&D Basic collection. So the first thing that I have here is actually one of those DM's Guild products that I purchased, and that is Module B1, In Search of the Unknown. So this was the adventure that I believe came packed in with the Eric Holmes version of D&D, actually. So this was the adventure that came with this, and this was actually meant to be sort of an instructional module on how to basically how to stock and design dungeons. So a lot of this really is based off of trying to get like the dungeon masters to essentially assign the monsters where they want. So like none of the enemies have their own set places for encounters. The same goes for treasure, so it's up to the dungeon master to sort of put all that stuff in. But you do get a fully fleshed out dungeon with really actually pretty good descriptions of a lot of the rooms here. Some of them go into to quite a bit of detail. So really, really awesome adventure. And I kind of like the idea of this product. And this is something that I actually did a video for a while back, saying that it'd be kind of interesting if Wizards of the Coast would do something like that again. Release sort of an introductory product that has the dungeon master actually putting some of the work into it to make the adventure sort of their own. So a really neat concept, and really an underrated adventure in my opinion. So we got that there. The next two items actually are not print on demand. These are original items. So these are, the first one I have here is B2, Keep on the Borderlands. So this came, I want to say actually even later versions of the Holmes Basic I think had this in there. If not, I know that was compatible with like the Moldvay Basic, although I don't necessarily think that it came in the box set. So if I'm wrong, please correct me, because I always make mistakes when it comes to this sort of thing. But this is one of the quintessential D&D adventures, and for an entire generation of gamers, this was their introduction to the Dungeons and Dragons game. So you've got like the Caves of Chaos, which is one of the more iconic locations in all of Dungeons and Dragons. You've got an owl bear on the inside there, and this was an adventure that did not hold the players' hands. I remember we did play this actually. A friend of mine was running it, and we went through it, and I didn't get to play only a couple of sessions, but I remember I think one of the sessions that I played was one of the last ones for the group, because we made a wrong turn essentially, and we wound up in like I think it was a Minotaur's lair that we ended up fighting, and it just destroyed us. So a really awesome adventure, and again, this is one of those things that this was the introduction for a lot of people. Like B1 was sort of like the first module in the product line, but B2, Keep on the Borderlands, is probably one of the most iconic D&D adventures for most veterans. So really awesome thing to check out. Goodman Games, I believe is the name of the company, did actually recently release a product that has B1 and B2 in it. I think it's called, is it In Search of the Borderlands or something like that? I can't remember the name of it now. But it's this massive book that collects reprints the original versions, as well as some of the variants. Like there's some changes that were made in subsequent printings, and an updated version for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So I don't have that at this time. It's kind of hard to justify the money on it, considering that I have the base adventures. But it is something that if you don't have them, it is worth checking out if you can find it in your area. All right, up next we have the adventure that came packed in with the original expert rules. This is the Isle of Dread, and it's got David Cook and Tom Moldvay right on there. So this is basically this is like the dinosaur island kind of adventure. So Isle of Dread is another one of those iconic locations though in D&D history. I've never actually played through this, but it was redone in Dungeon Magazine. They released a map for the Isle of Dread, and the Isle of Dread actually played a major role in Dungeon Magazine's last adventure path, which was the oh dear lord, why can I not remember that now? It was the one with Demogorgon, anyway. So you had Age of Worms was the middle one. You had Shackled City, Savage Tide. There we go. So the Savage Tide Adventure Path used the Isle of Dread actually quite a bit. All right. Up next, also for the well, this is all for the D&D Basic line, but this is B1-B9, or B1 through B9, In Search of Adventure. So this is a campaign adventure for levels, character levels 1 through 3. So this sort of collects, and it's not a complete compilation of adventures B1 through B9. It's kind of like the greatest hits version, where it focuses on, like, it breaks some of them down into just using like a component of the adventure. For example, B1 only exists as a map in the back, and that the dungeon master can essentially stock that map up if they want. If the players decide to go off and explore. So you've got like the map there, but it doesn't actually get used. But it's actually really interesting the way that they do this, because you have sort of a flow chart that you follow, and depending on the choices that the characters make dictates which parts of the B series adventures that the characters actually go through. So they don't go through like B1 all the way through B9 throughout their progression through the book. They'll basically play like 3 to 4 scenarios taken from those modules, and you could actually. What's also cool about this is that you could run this for the same group several times, and even though the setup and the basic conclusion's the same, how they get there can be different. So, really awesome product, and something that I basically jumped on as soon as I saw it available. Alright, so I've got a bunch of things for, like, adventures for the basic rule set, but I don't have any way to actually run them yet. So that's where this comes in. This is the D&D Rules Cyclopedia. This is the print-on-demand version from DM's Guild or Drive-Thru-RPG. And yeah, this was a book that there was a lot of hassle for me to get this. But I finally have it in my collection, and I love this version of Dungeons & Dragons. I'm currently running a first edition AD&D game, and I am enjoying it. I really do like the system, but I kind of want to run this a little bit more, so... But I will, like, run out the AD&D one to its sort of full conclusion. And then up next, I'm definitely going to be running this, because I love this version of the game. This is a fantastic book. This is an all-in-one book that has your player character information, your dungeon master information, including like your monster manual, basically all of your equipment, your magic items, your treasures, all the combat rules that you could use. There are a couple of bits of information that are missing from the rule set, but a lot of that stuff that you can borrow from other versions of the games, or just make up your own house rules for. But this is an excellent product, and this was, again, sort of a later attempt to get extra life out of the D&D Basic line, and this book is crazy expensive to try to find nowadays. I've seen rules encyclopedias listed on eBay for a halfway reasonable price of like $60, all the way up to like $600. So I would recommend getting the print-on-demand version if you want to get this, and if you want to explore sort of the earlier versions of D&D, this is the first one that I would honestly recommend, because I think it's an excellent system. So we got that there. And to go along with the Rules Cyclopedia, I also have the Creature Catalog. Again, this was a print-on-demand product, and this came out after the Rules Cyclopedia came out. So this was actually meant to follow up the Rules Cyclopedia. As you can see, it actually has the same style of Dungeons & Dragons logo versus the earlier version that sort of looked like that. But it's all, again, all these things are compatible with one another. So this actually has, again, a pretty interesting collection of creatures in here, and whenever you get more monsters, it's just generally a good thing to have overall. This book has the Shadow Elves in it, so they were actually not in the main book. So if you wanted to sort of have some information on them, then you can do that. This also has like the Undead Dragon. Just some really cool monsters. So again, if you want to start designing your own adventures for using the D&D Basic rule set, then after you get the Rules Cyclopedia, this would be like the next thing that I would highly recommend. So again, just it's great to have some more monsters in there. Alright, up next, and our second to last product, I will have more things to show off in future videos, trust me on that one. But we have here the Dungeons & Dragons game accessory, or AC1, the Shady Dragon Inn. This is another one of those things that a friend of mine has, like the original version of it, and this is just such a cool product. Again, this is a print-on-demand version, but this is just filled with pre-generated characters that you can play. So as a player, you can just pick one of these characters out, or as a dungeon master, you can use these as encounters. And it's got a whole bunch of fighters, thieves, clerics, wizards, and then you have like elves, dwarves, and halflings, because they were their own separate races back then. And then in the back, you actually have the special characters, which were essentially based off of the LJN action figure line. So this is like the first place where you would see like Warduke, or one of the earliest places. It may not be the first, but it's one of the earliest places where you'd have stats for like Warduke, Strongheart, and characters like that. In the back, it also gives you just some sample parties that you can use. And the print-on-demand version breaks down the inn's map into separate pages, whereas the original one, I believe, had it as a fold-out poster sort of thing that you could fold out and have the map on it there. So my one recommendation is, if you want to print out the map, I would recommend getting, if you want the physical version but you want to print out the map as well, I would get the bundle, which has the physical version plus like an extra $1 or so for the PDF, and then you can just print off the map yourself. So, but this again is another really cool product. So that's basically it for unique products, but there's one last thing that I need to show here. This was actually something that was again donated by a viewer, and it's interesting that my first 3 Dungeons & Dragons collection videos are going to all have a pretty significant item in them that was donated by a viewer, which is absolutely crazy. I've never asked for people to send me things, and I usually want to make sure that they're absolutely certain that they want to send something to me before accepting it. So, but anyway, this is something that absolutely blew my mind, and what that is an original copy of the D&D Rules Cyclopedia. So we sort of already looked at the print-on-demand one. It's the exact same book, but this is one of this is the actual original version for it. And what was actually kind of cool is, like I said, this book goes for a lot of money. The person who gave this to me, he bought it at a used bookstore, I think he said, for $2. So, which is really crazy. But again, this is just a fantastic book. And for something that came out, back in 1991, this is in really good shape. Whoops. I want to say that this is one of the earlier printings too. It doesn't list anything about a second or third printing, so I think this is one of the first print runs of the book, if they even did multiple ones. But anyway, just a really awesome thing to have. in the collection. And again, this is one of those, again, holy grail items, and it's not a term that I like to use liberally, but this is something that I really genuinely thought I would never have, because the prices were just too insane. Like, even at the low end, $60 is more than I want to spend on a used book. So to have this now is just absolutely insane. And what it does is it sort of gives me a couple of copies to have at the table, so I can have my players look through a copy potentially, or I could just sort of have like this on the shelf and cherish it, and have this be the one that I take with me when I finally do get around to running it. So yeah, so that was my collection of the D&D Basic Rules materials. So the Basic Rules stuff is probably one of my last major D&D collecting goals. I would still love to get copies of the Holmes version, as well as the Moldvay Basic and Cook Expert. So I would love to get copies of those. They do have the PDFs available at DM's Guild, but I'm holding out hope that they will eventually make them print on demand, or that I'll be able to find them for a reasonable price out in the wild. But there you go. So let me know in the comments below, have you guys played the D&D Basic Rules? You know, what were your thoughts and what were some of your experiences with it? A lot of people sort of cut their teeth on the Basic Rules set with Caves of Chaos, you know, Keep on the Borderlands. So I would love to hear any of your experiences with this wonderful version of the game. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and next week I will be showing off my first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons collection. Until then, thanks for watching. We'll see you later.